If I told you that the Allied victory in World War II was not only secured by brilliant generals, but also by a homeless corpse found floating in the sea and a literal army of balloons, would you believe me? You should probably throw away your dry history textbooks right now, because the reality of this war plays out like a terrible science fiction movie script where the director drank way too much before yelling action. We are talking about a conflict where armies used bats as bombers, pigeons as pilots, and genuinely planned to burn the Earth to a crisp using a giant magnifying glass in space. Welcome to the underground world of World War II, where logic died the moment the first shot was fired. Let's kick things off with the greatest prank in military history, a moment when the US Army decided that the best way to terrify the Germans was not with steel, but with hot air. This was the Ghost Army, officially known as the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. Picture this. While General Patton was out there screaming for blood on the front lines, the Pentagon was quietly recruiting a weird squad of artists, fashion designers, sound engineers, and architects from art schools. Their mission wasn't to fight, it was to put on a massive Broadway show in the middle of a war zone. They built hundreds of Sherman tanks, military trucks, and artillery cannons, all made completely of inflatable rubber. From a German reconnaissance plane flying at 10,000 feet, these tanks looked terrifyingly real, poised to crush everything in their path. But down on the ground, the reality was hilarious. You could see a skinny private lifting a 40-ton tank with one hand, or spinning a cannon around like a basketball. To make the deception deep, they used massive speakers to blast the sounds of tank tracks grinding on pavement and soldiers swearing, audible from 15 miles away. The Nazis were so convinced that they moved 2 entire elite divisions to block this phantom army, leaving their flank wide open for the real American attack. This traveling inflatable circus is estimated to have saved 30,000 American lives, proving that in war, being a good liar is sometimes better than being a good shot. If the Americans were masters of visual effects, the British took deception to a level of morbid genius with Operation Mincemeat. This is where history gets stranger than any spy novel. British intelligence needed to convince Hitler that the Allies were not targeting Sicily, so they came up with a plan that was equal parts brilliant and psychotic: use a dead body to deliver fake news. They obtained the corpse of Glyndwr Michael, a homeless man in London who had tragically died from eating rat poison. They didn't just dump him in the ocean, though. They turned his corpse into a masterpiece of fiction. They dressed him up as a Royal Marines officer, gave him the fake name Major William Martin, and stuffed his pockets with top-secret documents claiming the Allies were targeting Greece. The level of detail was obsessive. They put theater ticket stubs in his wallet, unpaid bank bills, and even a tear-jerking love letter with a photo from a completely fictional girlfriend named Pam. The goal was to make the Germans believe this was a real person with a messy life who had carelessly drowned. And Hitler took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. When the body washed up in Spain, Nazi intelligence treated the found documents like gold. Hitler immediately ordered troops to abandon Sicily to defend Greece. So when the Allies actually stormed Sicily, the German defenses were paper thin. Glyndwr Michael, a man ignored by society while he was alive, ended up saving thousands of soldiers after he was dead, a tragic irony that no Hollywood screenwriter could invent. But human madness didn't stop there. When they ran out of bad ideas, they decided to drag the animal kingdom into the fight. Have you ever looked at a bat and thought, that looks like a good arsonist? Well, a dentist named Lytle Adams did. This wasn't a general, mind you, but a dentist who convinced President Roosevelt to approve Project X-ray. The logic was simple. Japanese cities were mostly made of wood and paper, and bats love hiding in dark eaves and attics. So why not strap tiny napalm bombs to thousands of bats and drop them over Japan? It sounds like cartoon logic, but the military actually spent millions on it. They captured thousands of bats, froze them to induce hibernation, and strapped mini-bombs to their chests. However, reality hit hard during a test run at Carlsbad Airfield. The bats woke up earlier than expected because it was a sunny day. Instead of flying into the fake target buildings, the panic-stricken suicide bombers flew into the darkest places they could find. The general's personal car, the ammunition depot, and under the barracks. Boom! The entire testing base was incinerated in minutes. Firefighters just stood there watching, because how do you fight a fire that has wings and actively hides inside the walls? The project was canceled, but it taught the military a valuable lesson. Never give weapons of mass destruction to an animal that you cannot order to stand still. Failing with bats didn't stop the mad science. Next up was the pigeon. Enter Project Pigeon, the brainchild of B.F. Skinner, the most famous behavioral psychologist of the century. Since computer chips didn't exist yet, Skinner decided to use pigeon brains as the guidance system for missiles. He designed a missile nose cone that housed 3 pigeons. In front of each bird was a screen projecting the image of the target on the ground. The birds were trained to peck furiously at the target image to get corn. If the target moved off-center, the pigeons would peck at the edge of the screen, and the force of their pecking would mechanically steer the missile back on course. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but in simulations, these kamikaze pigeons were actually more accurate and reliable than human pilots because they didn't know fear, they only knew hunger. The military burned $25,000 on this before shutting it down. The generals simply couldn't get past the absurdity of it. They couldn't imagine telling the president that their most advanced weapon system was powered by 3 birds smashing their faces against a piece of glass for a snack. It was shelved, but it proved that the line between genius and insanity is often just a handful of birdseed. Finally, to wrap up this list of lunacy, we have to talk about the Nazis. While the Americans were playing with biology, the Germans were looking at the stars with a supervillain ambition. Nazi scientists seriously developed plans for something called the Sun Gun. The idea was to launch a massive space station into orbit, 5,000 miles above the Earth. Attached to this station would be a giant concave mirror 1 mile wide made of metallic sodium. The concept was exactly the same as a sadistic kid using a magnifying glass to burn ants on the sidewalk, except the ants were cities like London or New York, and the magnifying glass was the size of a mountain. They calculated that this mirror could focus the sun's rays to boil oceans or incinerate a city in seconds. They even designed docking bays for rockets and hydroponic pumpkin gardens to provide oxygen for the crew operating this death ray. Although 1940s technology couldn't even get a rocket into space properly, the cold, mathematical seriousness of the Nazi scientists is terrifying. They weren't joking, they genuinely wanted to weaponize the sun. Fortunately for us, the Third Reich collapsed before they could lay the first brick of this planetary toaster. Otherwise, the weather forecast today wouldn't be about rain or shine, it would be about which city was scheduled to be melted by noon. If you think the cast of characters in World War II only consisted of grim men in gray helmets, you are about to have your mind blown. The roster of this war included a beer-drinking bear, a squad of teenage girls flying lawnmowers, and a cat that was apparently more durable than a battleship. Let's step away from the generals and meet the true oddballs of the conflict, starting with the only soldier in history who was paid in cigarettes and honey. Meet Private Wojtek. That wasn't a nickname. He was a literal 500-pound Syrian brown bear adopted by the Polish Second Corps in Iran. But Wojtek wasn't a mascot kept in a cage, he was one of the boys. He grew up wrestling with the soldiers, sleeping in their tents, and learning to salute when superior officers walked by. The soldiers treated him so much like a human that he developed some bad habits. Wojtek loved drinking beer right out of the bottle, and he would smoke cigarettes, although he usually just ate them lit because he preferred the crunch. When the Polish army was deployed to Italy, British transport authorities refused to let a wild animal on the ship. So, the Polish soldiers did the only logical thing. They officially enlisted him. They gave him a rank, a service number, and a paybook. Private Wojtek was now a legal soldier. The legend of Wojtek peaked at the bloody Battle of Monte Cassino. While men were dying of exhaustion trying to move heavy artillery shells up the mountain, Wojtek watched them, stood up on his hind legs, and started carrying 100-pound crates of ammunition effortlessly, never dropping a single one, despite the explosions around him. He survived the war and retired to the Edinburgh Zoo, where his old war buddies would visit him and toss him cigarettes, a peaceful end for the hairiest hero of the 20th century. If Wojtek represented brute strength, the Night Witches represented pure, silent terror. This was the Soviet 588th Night Bomber Regiment, composed entirely of women, mostly in their late teens and early 20s. The Germans laughed at them initially because the Soviets gave them Polikarpov Po-2 planes. These were crop dusters made of plywood and canvas, so slow that they were practically flying kites. They had no radio, no radar, and no parachutes, but the women turned this technological garbage into a nightmare. Their planes were so slow that German fighter jets couldn't shoot them down because the jets would stall if they tried to fly that slow. The Night Witches developed a terrifying tactic. They would climb to a certain altitude, cut their engines completely, and glide silently toward the German trenches. The only sound the Germans heard was the soft whoosh of the wind over the wooden wings, which sounded like a witch's broomstick. Before the Nazis could react, bombs were dropping on their heads from nowhere. The Germans were so terrified of them that any German pilot who shot one down was automatically awarded the Iron Cross. These women flew up to 18 missions a night, proving that you don't need high tech to be deadly. You just need nerves of steel and a wooden plane. From the skies, we move to the high seas to meet a sailor who had the best luck, or perhaps the worst luck, in naval history. Meet Unsinkable Sam, the cat who simply refused to die. Sam started his career on the Bismarck, the pride of the Nazi Navy. When the British sank the Bismarck, over 2,000 sailors died, but Sam was found floating on a board. He was picked up by the British destroyer HMS Cossack. You'd think he'd be safe now, but no. A few months later, a German U-boat torpedoed the Cossack. The ship sank, but Sam survived, again. He was then transferred to the aircraft carrier HMS Ark Royal. And guess what? The Ark Royal was torpedoed and sank 3 weeks later. Once again, Sam was found floating on a piece of debris, angry but alive. By this point, the British sailors started looking at the cat with suspicion, realizing that while the cat was unsinkable, any ship he stepped on was definitely doomed. They wisely retired him to a sailor's home on land, where he lived for another 14 years, far away from any water. While Sam was switching ships, a human soldier named Yang Kyung-jong was busy switching entire armies against his will. His story is the definition of a bad day that lasted for years. Yang was a young Korean man conscripted by the Japanese Imperial Army in 1938 to fight against the Soviets. The Soviets captured him, threw him in a labor camp, and then, because they were short on men, forced him to fight for the Red Army against the Germans. His luck didn't improve. In Ukraine, he was captured by the Nazis. The Germans, seeing a pair of hands that could hold a rifle, dressed him in a German Wehrmacht uniform and sent him to France to defend the Atlantic Wall. On D-Day, American paratroopers stormed the beach and captured a confused Asian man in a German uniform who couldn't speak German, English, or Russian. He was just a Korean kid who'd been dragged across the entire globe to fight in everyone else's war. He eventually moved to Illinois and lived a quiet life, probably happy to never see a uniform ever again. Finally, we end this section with a family reunion from hell. We all know Adolf Hitler, the man who plunged the world into chaos. But did you know he had a nephew who hated his guts? William Patrick Hitler was born in the UK, the son of Adolf's half-brother. In the 1930s, William tried to blackmail his famous uncle for a high-ranking job, threatening to sell embarrassing family secrets to the press.
Adolf called him "my loathsome nephew" and told him to get lost. William fled to the United States, and when war broke out, he did the ultimate power move. He joined the US Navy to fight against his uncle. Imagine the scene at the recruitment office. The officer asks name, and he replies, Hitler.
After a bewildering FBI investigation, they let him join. William Patrick Hitler served as a hospital corpsman, received a Purple Heart, and literally fought to destroy the Third Reich. It remains the greatest irony of the war. While Hitler was obsessed with bloodlines and loyalty, his own blood was wearing an American uniform, loading a gun, and coming to end his reign. War usually destroys everything in its path, but sometimes, in a twist of corporate irony, it creates things that become permanent fixtures in our fridge. If you have ever enjoyed a cold bottle of Fanta on a hot day, you should raise a glass to the Third Reich, because that is where your orange soda was born. In the 1930s, Coca-Cola was incredibly popular in Germany. The Germans loved the stuff, but when the war started and the Allies imposed trade embargoes, the Coca-Cola branch in Germany was cut off from the secret American syrup that gave Coke its flavor. The head of the German division, Max Keith, was a businessman who wasn't about to let a little thing like a world war ruin his profit margins. He needed a new product, and he needed it fast. He looked around the factories to see what ingredients were actually available in a starving nation. The answer was garbage, literally. The original Fanta was made from the leftovers of other food industries, specifically apple fiber left over from cider presses and whey, which is the watery byproduct of making cheese. It was essentially a cheese and apple scrap soda. When he told his team to use their imagination to come up with a name, a salesman shouted "Fantasy," and thus Fanta was born. The Nazis loved it, drinking millions of cases of it while Europe burned. So the next time you drink a Fanta, just remember, you are technically drinking the result of a Nazi supply chain crisis. Speaking of games, let's talk about Monopoly. You probably know it as the board game that ruins friendships and causes family arguments, but during World War II, it was a vital tool for prison breaks. The British intelligence service, MI9, realized that the Geneva Convention allowed humanitarian groups to send care packages to prisoners of war, and the Germans allowed board games through because they thought it kept the prisoners distracted and docile. The British partnered with Waddington's, the UK manufacturer of Monopoly, to create special edition sets. These weren't for sale in toy stores. Inside the game board, they hid high-tech silk maps of Europe that wouldn't rustle when unfolded and wouldn't dissolve in water. Underneath the play money, they hid real German, Italian, and French currency for bribes. And the little metal playing pieces, like the car or the dog, they contained tiny working magnetic compasses. These rigged Monopoly sets helped thousands of Allied airmen escape German prison camps. The Germans never suspected a thing, probably because they were too busy trying to figure out who was winning. Deception wasn't just for escaping. Sometimes it was used to cover up groundbreaking technology with a lie so stupid that everyone believed it. Have you ever been told that eating carrots helps you see in the dark? That is a myth invented by the British Royal Air Force to hide the invention of radar. In 1940, British night fighters suddenly started shooting down German bombers with terrifying accuracy in pitch-black darkness. The Germans were baffled. To keep their new AI radar technology a secret, the British government launched a massive propaganda campaign, claiming that their top ace, John Cunningham, and his fellow pilots were eating excessive amounts of carrots, and the vitamin A gave them supervision at night. The lie worked too well. It is believed that German scientists actually started feeding their own pilots massive amounts of carrots to catch up. The British public believed it too and started eating carrots to navigate during blackouts. The war ended 80 years ago, but the lie was so effective that parents are still telling their kids to eat carrots for night vision today. Sometimes, though, you don't need high-tech radar or clever board games. Sometimes you just need a potato. In 1943, the U.S. destroyer USS O'Bannon was patrolling the Pacific when it stumbled upon a Japanese submarine on the surface. The destroyer pulled up right alongside the sub, so close that the ship's guns couldn't depress low enough to hit it. The Japanese sailors ran to their deck guns to shoot the Americans. According to legend, the American sailors, having no weapons at hand, did the only thing they could think of. They ran to the deck storage bins, grabbed handfuls of potatoes, and started throwing them at the Japanese sailors. In the darkness and panic, the Japanese thought the potatoes were hand grenades. Terrified, they abandoned their guns and ran back inside the sub to submerge, effectively surrendering the advantage. The O'Bannon then pulled away slightly and sank the sub with its real guns. It remains the only naval victory in history partially credited to a root vegetable. Finally, we have to talk about how the war ended, specifically for the Russians. When Germany officially surrendered in May 1945, the relief and joy in the Soviet Union were overwhelming. But the Russians didn't just throw a parade, they threw the party to end all parties. The celebration was so intense, so widespread, and so thirsty that a bizarre crisis hit the nation. Within 22 hours of the peace announcement, the Soviet Union literally ran out of vodka, all of it. The state reserves, the shops, the private stashes, everything was drunk dry. A nation of millions partied so hard that they drank the country's entire supply of its favorite spirit in less than a day. The hangover the next morning must have been more painful than the war itself. It was a fitting end to a conflict that defied logic at every turn, a war that started with tanks and ended with a headache, proving that human endurance is great, but human thirst is infinite. Some people have bad days, some people have bad weeks, and then there is Tsutomu Yamaguchi, a man whose work commute was so disastrous that it defies the laws of probability. He is officially recognized as the only person to have survived 2 atomic bombs within 3 days. On August 6, 1945, Yamaguchi was in Hiroshima on a business trip. He was walking to the shipyard when the sky turned into a blinding magnesium flare. The little boy bomb had detonated. He was blown into a potato patch, suffered severe burns, and temporarily lost his hearing. Most people would take this as a sign from the universe to retire immediately and move to a cave. But Yamaguchi was a dedicated corporate employee. He wrapped himself in bandages, crawled onto a refugee train, and went back to his hometown, which happened to be Nagasaki. On August 9th, he actually reported for work. He was standing in his boss's office, covered in burns, trying to explain that a single bomb had destroyed an entire city. His boss didn't believe him, calling him crazy. At that exact moment, the sky flashed white again. The Fat Man bomb detonated over Nagasaki. The shockwave blew the windows out of the office. Yamaguchi survived again. He essentially survived the apocalypse, traveled to the sequel, and survived that too. He lived to be 93, proving that you can nuke a man twice, but you can't kill his work ethic. While Yamaguchi couldn't wait to get away from the war, another Japanese man loved it so much he decided to extend it for another 29 years. This is the story of Hiroo Onoda, the soldier who didn't get the memo. In 1944, Onoda was sent to Lubang Island in the Philippines with strict orders. You are absolutely forbidden to die by your own hand. It may take 3 years, it may take 5, but whatever happens, we'll come back for you. Onoda took this very literally. When the war ended in 1945, he saw the leaflets dropping from planes announcing the surrender. He read them, analyzed them, and concluded they were fake news propaganda by the Allies. So he stayed in the jungle. For the next 3 decades, while the world moved on to jet planes, television, and the Beatles, Onoda was still fighting World War II. He lived on coconuts and stolen bananas, kept his rifle in perfect working condition, and engaged in shootouts with local police, who he thought were enemy soldiers. It wasn't until 1974 that a Japanese backpacker found him. But Onoda refused to quit. He said he would only surrender if his commanding officer ordered him to. The Japanese government had to track down his old major, who was now an elderly bookseller, fly him to the jungle, and have him read the official ceasefire order. Onoda finally handed over his rusty sword, weeping. He had wasted his prime of his life fighting a ghost war, a testament to a loyalty so fierce it crossed the border into insanity. Speaking of insanity, let's talk about the weirdest battle of the entire war, the only time American and German troops fought side by side as allies. Welcome to the Battle for Castle Itter. It sounds like a fan fiction crossover event that went off the rails. In May 1945, Hitler was dead, and the war was days away from ending. Castle Itter in Austria was being used as a VIP prison, holding high-profile French prisoners, including former prime ministers and tennis stars.
The SS guards fled, but a die-hard SS division was coming back to massacre the prisoners. The prisoners sent for help and found an American tank unit led by Captain Jack Lee. But Lee was outnumbered, so he made an alliance with a group of anti-Nazi German Wehrmacht soldiers led by Major Joseph Gangl. Picture this, an American tank parked at the castle gate, defended by US GIs, German Wehrmacht soldiers, and French politicians wielding submachine guns, all fighting together against the SS. It was a chaotic siege. The American tank was destroyed. Major Gangl was killed by a sniper while trying to save a French prime minister, and they were down to their last bullets when reinforcements finally arrived. It remains the strangest footnote in military history, proving that when the chips are down, the enemy of my enemy is my best friend. But what fueled this relentless fighting spirit? Was it patriotism, ideology, or was it crystal meth? One of the biggest secrets of the Nazi Blitzkrieg strategy was that the German army was high as a kite. The German military issued millions of pills called Pervitin to their soldiers. Pervitin was marketed as an alertness aid, but chemically, it was pure methamphetamine. It was the Breaking Bad army. This explains how German tank drivers managed to drive for 3 days and nights without sleeping during the invasion of France. They weren't supermen, they were tweakers. The drug made them feel invincible, fearless, and tireless, but it also made them erratic and paranoid. Even Hitler was a walking pharmacy, receiving daily injections of meth, cocaine, and opiates from his personal doctor. By the end of the war, the entire Third Reich was essentially suffering from a massive drug crash. The image of the disciplined, robotic German soldier is a lie. The reality was a bunch of exhausted addicts trying to fight a war while coming down from a 4-year high. Finally, we arrive at a story so dark it was kept classified for decades, involving a future US president and a gruesome dinner menu. This is the Chichijima incident. In 1944, a young Navy pilot named George H.W. Bush was flying a bombing mission over the island of Chichijima. His plane was hit by anti-aircraft fire. He bailed out into the ocean and was terrified, paddling his tiny life raft away from the island as fast as he could. He was eventually rescued by a U.S. submarine. He was the lucky one. 8 other pilots were shot down that day and captured by the Japanese. They were not taken to a prison camp. Instead, in a horrific display of ritualistic brutality, they were executed. But it didn't end there. The Japanese officers on the island, driven by a shortage of food and a twisted samurai code, had the ship's surgeon butcher the bodies. They then held a banquet where they ate the livers and thigh meat of the American pilots, washed down with sake. George H.W. Bush sat in that submarine, traumatized, wondering what happened to his friends. He would go on to become the 41st President of the United States, but he narrowly escaped being the main course at a cannibal feast. It is a chilling reminder that beneath the uniforms and flags, war strips away civilization and reveals the darkest, most primal monsters hiding inside human beings. We often think of resistance in war as blowing up bridges or shooting generals, but sometimes resistance is just being incredibly petty. When Adolf Hitler conquered Paris in 1940, he wanted the ultimate souvenir photo, him standing atop the Eiffel Tower looking down on his new empire. He arrived in the city ready for his victory lap, but he faced a problem that even the Wehrmacht couldn't solve. The French resistance had sneaked in the night before and cut the elevator cables. They didn't bomb the tower, they just made it really inconvenient. If Hitler wanted to conquer the summit, he would have to walk up 1,710 steps. Being a dictator with an ego bigger than his stamina, Hitler refused to climb the stairs. He took a photo in front of the tower on the ground and left. It was a small, silent screw you from the French people, proving that while Hitler might have conquered France, he never conquered the Eiffel Tower. If Hitler was afraid of stairs, then Adrian Carton de Weert was afraid of absolutely nothing. He is officially the most unkillable soldier in human history. This British officer served in the Boer War, World War I, and World War II. Over the course of his career, he was shot in the face, head, stomach, ankle, leg, hip, and ear.
He survived 2 plane crashes, tunneled out of a POW camp, and bit off his own fingers when a doctor refused to amputate them. He wore a black eye patch over his missing eye and had an empty sleeve where his hand used to be. You would think a man who'd been turned into a human pincushion would hate combat, but in his memoirs he famously wrote, "Frankly, I had enjoyed the war." He was the real-life Terminator, a man so tough that death simply gave up trying to take him. When he was sent to negotiate with the Chinese government, Mao Zedong was reportedly terrified of him because he looked like a pirate who'd walked out of a nightmare. While humans were busy killing each other, nature decided to join the chat in the most horrific way possible on Ramree Island in Burma. In 1945, British forces outmaneuvered about 1,000 Japanese soldiers, forcing them to retreat into a dense mangrove swamp. The British surrounded the swamp and waited, broadcasting surrender appeals. The Japanese refused. But they weren't alone in the swamp. Ramree Island was home to thousands of saltwater crocodiles, the largest reptiles on the planet. That night, the British soldiers heard screaming that curdled their blood. It wasn't gunfire, it was the sound of a feeding frenzy. According to reports, of the 1,000 soldiers who entered the swamp, only about 20 came out alive to surrender the next morning. The rest were eaten. The Guinness Book of World Records lists this as the most number of fatalities in a crocodile attack. It serves as a grim reminder that no matter how dangerous man is with a rifle, he's just a snack to a dinosaur in the dark. War is usually a game for old men sending young men to die, but Calvin Graham took young to a whole new level. He was an American boy who wanted to fight so badly that he practiced shaving at age 11 just to look older. At age 12, he stood in line, deepened his voice, and told the recruiter he was 17. The recruiter, who probably needed to fill a quota, let him through. Calvin became a gunner on the USS South Dakota. He fought in the Battle of Guadalcanal, where he was wounded by shrapnel while pulling fellow sailors to safety. He was awarded the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart. He was a war hero before he had even hit puberty. His cover was only blown when his mother saw him in a newsreel clip and called the Navy to demand her baby back. He was stripped of his medals and dishonorably discharged, though his honor was restored decades later. It is a heartbreaking story of a stolen childhood where a boy traded his toys for a machine gun and actually used it. Deception is a common theme in war, but Juan Pujol Garcia, known as Agent Garbo, took it to an art form. He is the only person in history to receive the Iron Cross from Germany and the Member of the British Empire Medal from the UK. He was a double agent, but he started as a nobody chicken farmer in Spain who just hated Nazis. He tried to join British intelligence, but they rejected him, so he decided to freelance. He contacted the Germans, pretending to be a fanatical pro-Nazi government official who could spy on Britain. The Germans believed him and paid him to build a spy network. Garcia sat in Lisbon, Portugal, reading travel guides and train timetables, and invented an entire network of 27 fake sub-agents. He sent the Germans complex reports about troop movements that were completely made up. The British eventually found out and were so impressed they hired him for real. His fake reports were crucial in D-Day, convincing Hitler that the attack was happening elsewhere.
He was a man who trolled the Third Reich so hard they gave him a medal for it. We end this journey with a thought on the legacy of this madness. We look back at World War II as a black and white chapter in history books, defined by dates like 1939 to 1945. But for many, the war didn't end when the ink dried on the surrender papers. It continued in the jungles with Hiro Onoda, in the nightmares of George H.W. Bush, and in the bodies of survivors like Tsutomu Yamaguchi. These stories of beer-drinking bears, bat bombs, and unkillable soldiers remind us that war is not just about maps and treaties, it is about the absolute extremes of human experience. It shows us our capacity for supreme genius and utter stupidity, for incredible cruelty and unbreakable resilience. History is not boring. It is the wildest story ever told, written in blood, sweat, and occasionally invisible ink. So the next time you think you're having a weird day, just remember, at least you're not trying to invade Russia in the winter while high on meth. And that is the wrap on the shocking truths of World War II. If you want more deep dives into the insane side of history, you know what to do.